Hey guys, Bevan with Let's Level Up here. Today I'm going to show you the 19 and a half year anniversary edition, the beta, the preview version of Kill Dr. Lucky. This, as I said, is almost a 20-year-old game from its original release, and this new version has some rules changes and some updates to the game where they have basically tried to take out any rules that didn't make sense, streamline things, update rules where, you know, after 20 some odd years of playing the game and seeing the game played, they've decided that these rules work better, and they the game plays a lot better. For instance, in the original version of the game, the only way to stop someone from killing Dr. Lucky was with failure cards, and now most cards in the game can be played in one way or another to help you stop murder attempts against Dr. Lucky. That's one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from people about the original game, was that if you didn't have failure cards, you were just kind of out of luck. And you know, I've heard from people who haven't even played this new version and just heard that was one of the changes that was made, that was a big upgrade to the game, and that they were looking forward to playing this new game. I've played it a couple times. It is very fun. It was surprisingly light. I thought that it was going to be a heavier game or more difficult, or, you know, it was going to take a long time, but the plays I've had with it just flew by. It seemed like it didn't take long at all to play. It was interesting and compelling to play and to watch played when it wasn't my turn. Just in general, this is a great game, much lighter than I expected it to be, and very fun. Join me at the table and let's take a look at the game, and I'll go over the different rules that have changed. Okay, everybody, we're now here at the table. I have the print and play beta preview version of the new Kill Dr. Lucky here on the table. We have 3 players set up: red, black, and blue. And then over here we've got a token that represents Dr. Lucky. Now, obviously this paper board is not going to be the final product. My understanding is these tokens are just placeholder tokens as well that, you know, we can use for the preview. So I'm not real sure that I can speak to the final board or the tokens, but for our purposes here, this works great. The way that you start out is you have to first put all players in the drawing room, and then we want to put Dr. Lucky in a room based on what you do is you take the deck of cards here, you cut it, and then you take half of it and go through cards one at a time until you get to either a room. So in this case it would be the carriage house, and we would put him here, or, you know, if we got to a weapon card, each weapon card has a room that it works best in. This one works best in the carriage house. I couldn't have planned that better if I'd tried. So either way, if I'd have drawn either of those 2 cards, I would put Dr. Lucky in the carriage house. You just go through until you get a room or a weapon card, and then you place him in the appropriate room, and that's where he starts. That said, the board here, you may notice, is kind of color-coded. We have shades of green all up and down the center row here. Over here on the west wing of the house are all in shades of blue, and here on the right side, the east wing of the house, they're all in shades of red. That's going to come into play here in a moment. We'll go ahead and discuss it because it matters about where you place Dr. Lucky based on this next part. If you are playing a 3-player game, you close off both the east wing and the west wing of the house. You only play in these central green shaded tiles here, these green shaded rooms. In order to close them off, you don't really do anything, at least not in this print and play version. You just ignore those rooms. So for instance, if Dr. Lucky were in the greenhouse, he moves by number, so he would go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, normally you would go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You just skip that. So you would go from 7 up to 13 whenever Dr. Lucky moves from the greenhouse. He'd move directly to the nursery. And then same over here. Whenever you leave the library, you would just circle right around and come down here to the carriage house. So that's in a 3-player game. In a 4 or 5-player game, you choose either the east wing or the west wing and close it off. functionally, there's not much difference between doing one or the other. You just pick one and then you ignore those rooms. And that's just to kind of, take the board and kind of condense it down a little bit, where 3 of you aren't running all over this huge mansion. You're moving around much smaller rooms. And that makes sure that in a smaller game type, you aren't spending tons of time just trying to move around the board. I played a 3-player game. Actually, I played 2 3-player games last night. With the board condensed down to just the green area, and I thought it was great. As I said in the beginning, the game was very light and quick on its feet. I didn't feel like the game was dragging on, or I was having to spend a lot of time just maneuvering around. I was able to get where I wanted to be and do what I wanted to do pretty quickly. So that felt good. I also didn't feel like people could just be wherever they wanted to be in a 3-player game. Even with the mansion condensed down, it wasn't like you could move quickly enough that movement no longer mattered. So I think they've done well there. That's the board. And closing off areas based on game size. If you're playing with 6 or more people, you just play with the entire board. 2 people is kind of its own animal. In a 2-person game, you only close off the east or the west wing, just like in a 4 or 5-person game, but there's more to it. You don't just play with 2 people in a 2-person game. You actually have 2 ghost players that play along with you, and they can win the game. So in a 2-player game, just like in a 3 or 4-player game, it's not like it's just one of you is going to win. There's a chance that neither of you will win. So, but those are additional rules that you can get into if you want to play a 2-player game. To take a look at the cards that we have here, again, these are print and play, but I assume this is similar to what we'll see in the final game. We have 3 types of cards. We have movement or room cards. It's the same card now. So this card would allow you to move either directly to the armory, or it would allow you to move 1 space. You can play it either way you want. So if I choose to use a move card to move directly to the armory, from wherever I am, I just go straight there. If I choose to use it as a move 1, then it just allows me to move. Sorry about that, I've got butterfingers. It allows you to just move 1 space, just like the move you would naturally get on your turn. If you want to take a look at the weapon card here, it has a 3 here and then a lower 6 next to it. Also on the weapon card down here, it says that it's best used in the drawing room. What that means is normally the killing joke is worth 3 murder points, or reason points is what they call them. If you are in the drawing room, in the room that it specifies, then you get the larger number, the 6. So you'd want to try to play those cards in the appropriate rooms if you can, but you don't have to do that. The last type of card we have is a failure card. So here's our failure card. It has a value of 4. Notice that it has these 4 shamrocks or luck points on it. That is the value of this card when used to oppose a murder attempt. Something that is a little different in this game compared to the original version of the game is that you actually have luck points on all cards, or can have luck points on all cards, not just on failure cards. Here's just a few that I've pulled out. So you can see this card here, no luck points. This card here, no luck points. There's no shamrocks here. And then this weapon also has none. But this weapon does. It has 1 on it. Both of these rooms have 2 luck points on them. They both have 2 shamrocks. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, previously you had to have these failure cards like this one in order to try to prevent a murder attempt. But now you can discard, most of the cards have some amount of luck on them. There's a good number that don't have any, but in the games I've played, it's definitely, I saw more luck on cards than I saw cards with no luck. So that really helps the gameplay quite a bit, because you're not sitting there not able to do anything to try to stop stop other players' murder attempts if you don't have any failure cards. You can burn cards in your hand that have luck on them, even if they aren't failure. And that actually does a lot for the gameplay, because that actually makes you make a decision. If the failure card, if the only point of it is to stop somebody from killing Dr. Lucky, there's no reason not to use it other than just to have it in your hand. But if I burn these cards to try to stop someone from killing Dr. Lucky by using their luck value, I'm missing out on those movements, either to the foyer or the master suite, or moving 1 or 2 extra spaces. So that's now a decision that I have to make. Instead of just, yeah, I've got a failure card, of course I'm going to use it. You might, have to decide, do I want to burn off these cards? Would I be better set to hold on to them and hope someone else stops this murder attempt? So that's definitely something. I like it when games make you make a decision. It's not that you're just kind of along for the ride of watching the gameplay itself. So that's definitely a feather in the cap of the game for me there. Those are the card types. On your turn, the way that we play this game, you randomly decide, or as a group decide, who's going to go first. And the turn order is a player and then Dr. Lucky. And then you move clockwise to the next player and then Dr. Lucky, and then clockwise and Dr. Lucky. He takes a movement between each 2 players' turns. So, for instance, on my turn, every player gets a one room move action, and then they have one other action they get to take. They can either play movement cards. When you play movement cards, you can play any number of movement cards. You don't have to just play one. And movement cards are unique as far as playing cards is concerned, because you can, for instance, if I wanted to move to the master suite, so I would move from here to the master suite up here, and then I want to take my 1 free movement action, I can do that. So I could move all the way to the master suite and then come over here to the nursery if I wanted to. And that, adds something to the game. The movement cards, again, are the only ones that you can do that with. If you're playing, or if you're drawing a card, which is one of your other actions, or you're trying to kill Dr. Lucky, which is the 3rd action you can take on your turn besides that free movement, those are done at the end of your turn. They are only done if you satisfy certain criteria when you end your turn. So just remember, the only thing, if you're going to take an action, unless it's a movement, it's going to happen at the end of your turn. So if you try to kill Dr. Lucky, you can't take your free movement afterward. So if I were back here in the drawing room, I could take my 1 movement here if I wanted to, and then let's say that in my hand I have this card, and I'll use it to move 1. So I go ahead and play that. I'm now here. That enters into the second part of the turn. I've mentioned drawing and trying to kill Dr. Lucky. In the original game, this is one of the key things that has changed. In the original game, you could draw a card as long as you had not played a card. In this game, or in this version of Kill Dr. Lucky, you can draw a card anytime you end your turn in a room where no one else has line of sight. So what does line of sight mean? You'll notice these kind of lighter areas, these breaks in the walls. Here's one, here's one, here's one. If you draw a line perpendicular to the doorway itself, so going straight this direction, anytime you pass through a doorway, you have line of sight into that room. So, for instance, from the foyer, you can see into the drawing room, the dining hall, and upstairs into the gallery over this balcony here. And vice versa, you can see from the gallery all the way down to the foyer. But you can't see from the foyer into the piazza or vice versa there, because there's a wall blocking you. Even though there is a doorway here, you can't go straight through because that wall blocks you. If you are in the kitchen, you can see all the way up the stairs into the master suite. If you are in the master suite, you can see from the nursery to the gallery to the library. You can see all the way over here. If you're in the Tennessee room, you can see to the library, to the armory, to the nursery. The only thing that is not completely intuitive as far as line of sight is concerned, this dotted line represents that you can see back and forth between these two rooms, but this gallery is actually a second floor balcony and overlook over the dining hall, so you cannot move from the gallery to the dining hall and vice versa. In addition, you'll notice that right here, this is actually solid. You cannot look from the Lancaster room across into the lilac room or vice versa. You can see from the Lancaster room into the dining hall and the lilac into the dining hall and you know, back and forth, but you can't look all the way across here because this balcony stops your sight between lilac and Lancaster. That's the only place that might need any kind of explanation whatsoever. So if I move from here into the sitting room, no one has line of sight on me. There's no one in this room, no one in this room, so I can draw a card. So I just take the deck that we've shuffled and I take the top card off the deck and put it into my hand, and now I have access to that card. Now that red player has gone, Dr. Lucky takes a turn. The way Dr. Lucky takes a turn, as I mentioned before, each of these rooms has a number on it, and they kind of go in a strange little windy pattern. Right now he's in the carriage house, so he's going to go from room 22 to room 23. That's his turn. That's all he does the whole game. Is he just, between each player's turn, he advances one room along his track. So clockwise around the table from red is black. So black wants to move, let's say black is going to try to move over here to the greenhouse. So he's going to go ahead and move over here to the trophy room for now. He has line of sight on him from both the sitting room and the drawing room. Both of those see into the trophy room where we have other players. And so he cannot draw a card or do anything else because he has line of sight. Drawing a card is like picking up a weapon. You don't really want somebody to see you picking up the weapons that you're going to try to use to kill Dr. Lucky. So that's why you can't do that. Black has taken his turn, so now Dr. Lucky is going to advance into the foyer. Well, now it's Blue's turn. Blue can go ahead and step into the foyer if he wants with his one free room of movement on his turn, and now the trophy room cannot see into the foyer. The sitting room cannot see into the foyer, so no other player has line of sight on blue player, so he can try to kill Dr. Lucky as his turn if he wants. Drawing cards can be stopped by Dr. Lucky. If he's seeing you, you can't draw cards. You have to not have line of sight from anyone. But obviously you can try to kill him if he has line of sight on you, because you have to be in the room with him to try to kill him. So the way you do that is each player starts with one reason point. So when you are on your turn, you would say, okay, well, I'm going to try to play, or I'm going to try to kill him, and I start with one reason point, and I don't have any weapon cards in my hand that are better in the foyer, so I'm just going to pick one. We'll go ahead and use the killing joke. So I add the lower number, since we aren't in the drawing room, which is this card's bonus room. I'll use the 3. So now I have a 4 reason value for trying to kill Dr. Lucky. So then going clockwise around the table from Blue's position, each player would have a chance to play one or more cards, discard them, that have luck values on them, trying to add up to 4, which is, again, the 3 from the weapon card plus the 1 that everybody starts with. So the next player around, going back to red, could play this failure card and just stop the whole thing. But that's a pretty powerful card. It might be better for him to play this 2 Shamrock card and leave it up to the black player to go ahead and finish that off, to try to make sure that you're not the only one spending cards. You could also just say, I don't have anything to play, and rely completely on the black player to spend all of his luck to try to prevent the murder attempt. So that's kind of a little gamble you have to make. I really like that part of the game. And that's going to, if you're spending all of your cards willy-nilly to try to stop murder attempts, then you're going to card out pretty quickly, and then other people are going to have card advantage on you. So that's something you want to watch out for. Overall, that's the game. You move, and you can play move cards. You can try to draw a card if no one has line of sight on you at the end of your turn, and you can try to kill Dr. Lucky if you two are in the same room at the end of your turn and no one else has line of sight on you. There is one other thing that you should know. Let's say that Blue had decided to stay in the drawing room. Whenever, and let's just move black here just for the purposes of this illustration. whenever Dr. Lucky moves, if he moves into a room that already has a player in it, so he moves in here, if blue is in here, it immediately becomes blue's turn. It doesn't matter if it was about to be black or red's turn. It's blue's turn because Dr. Lucky just walked into his room and it makes him the active player. So blue could then choose to move. There's a thing called riding the luck train where you could move ahead and now your turn's done. So he steps in after you. It's your turn again. You move ahead. Your turn is done. He steps in after you. You move ahead. Your turn is done. You see how that works. So you can use that to move around a little bit. Used to, that allowed you to card draw because you hadn't played any cards that round, so you could just draw and draw and draw and draw. That's no longer a part of the game. They wanted to move the game away from card draw and move it more towards strategy and informed movement choices that allow you to win the game, not just I had more cards so I had more ability to play than you did. So that's that. But if he steps in here, I told you that a murder attempt ends your turn, but that doesn't mean you don't get to do it. When it becomes your turn, if you want, instead of doing anything else, you can say, I'm going to try to kill him. So you would go ahead and do a murder attempt on him at that point. Anytime a murder attempt fails, you take any one of the cards played, either if you played a weapon card or if your opponent played a card with some luck value on it, you can pick that card, one of those cards up, and place it face down next to your character card. So here's a character card right here, and you would just play it face down next to your character card on the table, and that gives you +1 reason for the rest of the game. So the next time you try to make a murder attempt, it's going to be +2, and then next failure, the next one will be +3, etc., etc. Through that means you kind of level up as you go through the game, and every time you get a little bit closer to killing Dr. Lucky. So that's basically the game. The only other things I wanted to touch on, there was included with the rules for this game, there was a list of rules that have changed for you experienced players that are wondering what exactly is different. Moving, you don't count hallways as steps. So here's a hallway, you don't count that as a step. You wouldn't, to get to the Tennessee room from the dining hall, you wouldn't go 1, 2. The hallway basically just connects these two doors. So you would just move from here to any room that's connected to this doorway through this hallway. Very simple, very straightforward and easy. Move and room cards have been consolidated into one card type. Previously, you might have a card that allowed you to move to the armory or have a card that let you move one space, but they weren't together. These are consolidated, so there are fewer cards, and you get to choose how you use that card. Additionally, you used to be able to use move cards on Dr. Lucky to make him move around. You can no longer do that. Move cards only affect the player that's playing them. In the original game, as I mentioned, you qualified to draw cards by not playing any cards on your turn. In this version, you qualify by being out of sight. You can play cards and draw cards on the same turn. So again, it's no longer about card draw. It's more about wisely managing your movement and being strategic about where you are at the end of any of your given turns. Riding the lucky train in the original game, you could take several turns in a row and draw a card with each one, as I mentioned, because you wouldn't have played a card on each turn. You can no longer do that because chances are, if I try to move ahead of Dr. Lucky and then in my turn, well, I'm inside of Dr. Lucky. I can't card draw. He moves in, I move again. I'm still in sight of Dr. Lucky. I can't card draw. So that's something that's different. You can still use it to move around, and that could be helpful, but you can't use it just to get an insane amount of cards in your hands. Something to touch on while I'm talking about that, if there are two players in a room and Dr. Lucky moves into that room, let's say that the blue player had just gone and next it's black's turn. Well, because blue player just went and Dr. Lucky moved in here, blue player doesn't automatically get to go again. You have to decide between red and blue. So what you would do is you'd move clockwise around the table. Blue, the player to his player has the black token. Player to his left has black token, but he's not in the room, so we keep going. We get around to red. Red is in the room, so it's now red's turn. You just move clockwise from the most recent player before Dr. Lucky moved until you get to the color of a person who's actually in that room where Dr. Lucky just moved to, and it becomes their turn. Weapons used to replace your base value of 1. So you had a base of 1. If you played a weapon with 3, you'd have 3 total. Now they add to it. So you always have your base value of 1, and a weapon added to it would, if you add 3 to 1, obviously is 4. Previously, the buildup of ability to kill Dr. Lucky, your higher value of killing, was called Spite, and they've changed that to be called Reasons. Luck point is found on all card types, not just failure cards. You no longer have to separate the cards into 2 discard piles. Used to, weapon and movement cards were handled differently, or weapon and failure cards maybe were handled differently than one another. Now everything gets discarded together, and then you never reshuffle the deck when you're done. Once you card out, you card out. There is now 1 card for every room and 1 weapon for every room. So they've made these changes because they feel like this keeps the original flavor of the game, but they feel that it makes it a lot better. And after almost 20 years of playing it and watching it be played and hearing feedback, I feel like these rules have done very well for the game. I had a great time playing it. It didn't feel like the rules were weird or I had any problems with them. Once I read through and played a couple of turns, I said, oh yeah, this is easy, and we just breezed through a couple games. It's real fun, real interesting, very light, surprisingly light. I thought it would be heavier than it was. I thought I was going to be sitting down to kind of a bear of a game and strategy and stuff, but it really isn't like that at all. You could probably play a whole game with 3 players in the time it took you to watch this review, so definitely check it out. That said, let me go ahead and discuss one more thing. There are 2 extra or optional rules that you can use. Dr. Lucky's cat, Patience, can be included in the game. If you do that, she always starts in the kitchen. She doesn't care if you draw cards or kill Dr. Lucky, so in other words, Patience's line of sight has no effect on what you're able to do on your turn. She doesn't care what you're doing. Even if she can see you, you can still card draw and you can still try to kill Dr. Lucky. If you take a turn without moving, you can choose to move the cat after your turn ends, and you can move her directly to any room in the house. Now, what Patience does, if let's say that this blue here was Patience, and she was in here with the black token player. So she blocks line of sight out of this room for any players who are in the room with her. So if red were here and Dr. Lucky was over here, for instance, even though black has line of sight into this room, because Patience is in the room, he can't see out because he's distracted by her cuteness. Makes perfect sense to me. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I've seen casts and they're pretty distracting. I haven't played with that optional rule, but to me it seems really neat. It kind of adds a new facet to the game where if you feel like the gameplay is a little bit straightforward, which I was fine with, but if you want to add a little bit more of a dynamic feel to it, throw Patience into the mix and see what happens. She does not prevent someone from seeing through a room. So you can see into the room and you can see through it into another room, but you just can't see out of the room that she's in. The other optional game type is called Escape from Lucky Mansion, and in that game type, Dr. Lucky has already been killed, but he's risen from the dead and is terrorizing the people who tried to kill him in his house. And the goal is to outlive the other players and escape from the mansion. I haven't played that version, but just reading that sounds really fun. If you've been playing Kill Dr. Lucky a little bit and you decide you want to switch it up a bit, put your tongue in your cheek and go play Escape from Lucky Mansion. It seems like it'd be pretty fun, and I'm excited to try to get that version to the table here pretty quickly. So that said, that's the game. Please join me back at the table for final thoughts. Hey guys, that was Kill Dr. Lucky's 19.5-year anniversary edition. I would like to end the video by letting you know that, of course, this is a beta preview. So, as I said, the paper board and the pieces are probably going to change. I wouldn't expect to see the paper board or anything like that. This is just for us to take a look at the mechanics of the game and get to play it a little bit and give some feedback and, of course, show it to you all. I thought the game was really fun. If the rules change between now and release a little bit, that may be that might happen. I don't really see any reason for it, but then again, I'm not a game publisher, so there are probably people wiser and smarter than me that are going to look at this game, and they could maybe see something that I missed. But I thought it was very fun. As I said, I thought I was getting in for a game that was fairly heavy and was going to take me a while, but we played through a couple games pretty fast. I thought we were going to sit down for one, and when we were done, I looked around and said, "You guys want to play again?" They were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we had to go to work the next morning, so that said something that we were willing to sit down and play again and kind of keep ourselves up a little bit late. But it is a really fun game. I will say that I never played the original. I'm looking forward to going back and playing the original so I can compare and contrast. But some of the folks in my game group have said that they have played the original, and just reading through the rules or just having the rules explained a little bit in this new version, they were more excited to play this than the other. The biggest complaint I heard about the original was just the fact that the failure cards, if you didn't have any, you were kind of up a creek. You really could not do anything to stop someone from killing Dr. Lucky, and there weren't. Some people didn't feel there were enough failure cards in the deck, or at least they weren't getting the card draw on the failure cards they wanted, or something. And so it made them feel like they didn't have a whole lot of control over how the game went. It was just kind of a card draw issue, and that's something that between those complaints and then what was said by the developers of Kill Dr. Lucky, in the rules that we got, it seems like everybody wanted to see the game move away from just a card draw machine, just how many cards can you draw, and by virtue of having a lot of cards, surely some of them will be useful, into, well, let's make all the cards useful. Let's make every play compelling. Let's make every turn have you make a decision. Let's, have the way you play, the decisions you make, and your strategy mean something in the outcome of the game. And as I've said before, that's a big thing in my book. I want to think that whether I won or lost, that I got to play the game and I wasn't just kind of watching it get played. So that's great. I really think it's a fun game. I look forward to having the finished version in my shelf behind me here, and I hope that I have been informative and that maybe you want to play the game now too. Right now it's in Kickstarter, I believe, and maybe if you liked it enough, maybe go check out that Kickstarter, maybe go back it. Thanks, guys. Again, this has been Bevan Dawson with Let's Level Up, and I'll see you next time.